Hello guys and welcome to my new video, and today we're going to be choosing a main. Now this video is extremely delayed. It has been postponed multiple times, and spoiler alert for the people who want to know straight away, I don't know what my main is going to be 100%. I'm still narrowing down to 2-3 healer classes that I'm going to try and optimize during the first couple of weeks in Zereth Mortis, and honestly, my choice is probably going to be solidified during the Heroic Week and based on Heroic Week class tuning. The fact that I've delayed choosing a main or that I'm not 100% sure, this has been the hardest patch for me to choose. It's probably an indication that Blizzard did a good job in terms of balancing healers, because if there was one healer that's insanely overpowered, I'm probably going to be maining it straight away. But joking aside, I do tend to choose healers that are so much strong because I enjoy every single healing class, and when you're trying to progress mythic rating, mythic plus, trying to get rank 1 titles, I got rank 1 title in season 2. I also want to do the same thing in season 3, and a lot of the times the meta classes tend to provide you with less headaches, especially if you don't like to be rejected. So we're gonna start off with my class overview in terms of what I like about classes, what I don't like about classes. This is a personal opinion. You are more than free to disagree, agree with what I'm saying. This is at the end of the day my main, and my main is going to, this time around, is going to be heavily impacted by the raid composition, because in the guild we technically could have 3 Resto Shamans, which feels a little bit iffy. I can justify 2 Resto Shamans, but 3 Resto Shamans. Shamans are good, but I don't think they're that good to bring 3 in a raid. So let's go and start off with Resto Shaman. I made a list that I did on the stream. Again, I'm streaming on Twitch and things like that. We made a bit of a meme list about all the advantages and disadvantages of healers. And again, from my perspective, and I was hoping for this list help me make the decision. So first of all, Resto Shaman. I've mained Resto Shaman for a really long time. It is an easy to play ranged healer, and I do like ranged classes a lot. Ranged has a simplicity element to it that I find ranged easier to play. I feel a lot of people in World of Warcraft are either going to be players that are leaning towards melee or players that are leaning towards range, and I'm definitely one of those players that are leaning towards range. Now, let me know which type of player you are, but Resto Shaman, been playing it for a long time, very comfortable on Resto Shaman. I wanted to move away from Shaman because if you watch my videos, if you know me, I basically mained every single healer at some point with the exception of Priest. I haven't mained the Priest yet, but I've mained every other healer in high-end mythic rating and mythic plus and things like that, so I enjoy the challenge. I really do enjoy the challenge of different type of healers. Resto Shaman, really easy to play, really easy to do massive DPS bursts. Vesper Totem is looking insanely overpowered Mythic Plus. This is the best description of Resto Shaman 9.2. Good in raids and best in Mythic Plus. Resto Shaman and 9.2. 9.2 is looking like a Shaman time. Resto Shaman probably has, in overall general consensus, when you combine Mythic Plus and raids, is probably the best healer. If you look at meta perceptions, if you look at the performance, they're probably just edging out as being the best healer, and it's mainly because of their performance in Mythic Plus. It's looking extremely, like they're looking like a S tier whatever healer. A lot of people are ranking them and stuff like that. Shaman is going to pump, and there's multiple reasons for it. You can see here, the 4-set legendary is more to do in raids, but you have legendaries, double legendary combos, Earth Elemental combo, Kyrian combo, it's just looking absolutely nuts in all content. So it's really hard to step away from Resto Shaman after playing it for a long time, and in 9.2 Resto Shamans are looking like the strongest. It almost feels like I played Shaman for a long time, and now when they're becoming the best, I'm moving away from it. So Shaman is definitely going to be a healer that I'm going to be trying to maintain. I'm not saying it's going to be main. It's going to be one of those healers I'm going to try and maintain. I've even dabbled into Enhancement, because Enhancement Shaman is looking so strong for the new raid. Wind Fury Totem, the extra single target damage, the changes, it's looking really good. So, Resto Shaman, these are the positives by the way. The pluses and minuses are negatives and pluses are positives. So, good mana usage, both in Raid and Mythic Plus. Very mana efficient, which is pretty good. But in Mythic Plus, you have Encrypted, which does give you mana if you end up going with so that's something. You have an Interrupt. Honestly, this is such a big thing. Every time I play a healer other than Shaman, I feel almost naked without Interrupt. Interrupt in poke groups, this one ability is so big if you know how to use it, if you know what to interrupt, when to interrupt. You're honestly going to carry. I honestly feel other healers should get an interrupt or something along those lines, because this is, in an unorganized group, one of the best things you can have. I'm not even kidding. This is so big, because if you can prevent damage, you don't need to heal. So this is almost like the best healing tool you can get. in a lot of content. So some of the disadvantages that I felt about Resto Shaman, and these are based for me. So I've been playing it for ages. I am getting bored of Resto Shaman. I'm getting bored of Vesper Totem, but I feel really bad about dropping it completely. So like I said, I will play Resto Shaman, sacrificing HPS for utility. And this is what a lot of people might. This is coming from a more casual perspective. If you're looking to pump HPS, you might not be pumping HPS as Resto Shaman, because in high-end raiding, you're going to be using things like Windrush Totem, which technically don't have Graceful Spirit, which means your Spirit Walker's Grace is going to be a longer cooldown. You won't be able to use Earthen Wall Totem a lot of times because you might be using APT. Earthen Wall Totem accounts for a lot of HPS, so for people who are looking to pump HPS, you might have to sacrifice your HPS by going into utility talents, which is technically fine, because if you're in a good raiding group, they will appreciate your Windrush Totem, your APT. But if you're in a more casual setting and you just want HPS and you're like, oh, I just want a top HPS, there's a lot of people who play the game just to look good on the meters. Let's be honest. It's not all high-end content. It's not all world first race type of players. Sometimes you just want to look good on the meters and just feel good about your class. And the Resto Shaman, you might have to sacrifice a lot of that, things like that. So just keep in mind, I think Resto Shaman is looking extremely strong. I think it is looking really, really good in terms of providing utility, in terms of providing good HPS, in terms of providing, like, in raid situations in 9.2, I genuinely believe that if you do play like something like a Kyrian Resto Shaman is going to be providing good damage, is going to be providing good healing, and an insane amount of utility spells. And I feel like getting 1 or 2 Shamans is not a bad thing. The thing is that in our raiding group right now, we have the possibility of having 3 Resto Shamans, and I feel like that's going to be a pretty tough ask. So this is why I am going to maintain my Resto Shaman, but at the same time, I'm also prepared to reroll from Resto Shaman because we have so many. So now let's go to Restoration Druid, and Resto Druid has gone through a lot of, like, roller coaster emotions in terms of my hype to Resto Druid. Before the Kyrian nerf, I was really looking forward to trying out or maining Resto Druid for Mythic Plus because I was looking to step away from a Shaman, and Resto Druid was looking really, really nice because of the Simp build. I know a lot of people don't like the Simp build. A lot of people like to have DPS and value coming from their character instead of providing to someone else, but I didn't feel like that. I enjoyed providing, you know, or increasing other DPS, and that got nerfed. But honestly, I've had an insane amount of fun with Necrolord with Adaptive Swarm and things like that. I've been trying out a lot of the poke keys, like poke 20 keys and things like that, and it's really fun. In terms of Adaptive Swarm, it might not be the most engaging ability, but in terms of thematic presence, it just feels insane having this swarm. Like with the Adaptive Swarm legendary, it's everywhere. And I think it works really well with Resto Druid because Resto Druid has a lot of dots, hots, and now you have another hot that increases your hots and dots. It just feels right. So Druid has a lot of positives and negatives in my opinion, and mobility. Mobility is pretty big. You're going to be playing Resto Druid in Night Fae, or Resto Druid in raids. It's Night Fae, and you're going to have a Night Fae blink, you have Roar, you have Speed Boost, and things like that. There's a lot of, like, I enjoy healers that have high mobility and are tanky. These are one of the things that I really, really enjoy because it simplifies everything else. If you can survive mechanics, if you're mobile, you don't have to worry about boss mechanics that much, and you can focus on your raid rotation, Mythic Plus rotation, and things like that, and it just overall creates an easier experience. This is my personal opinion, by the way. HPS pumper. So this is a big one. Druid is going to pump HPS, especially with double legendaries and 4-set. Without a doubt, it's probably going to be the HPS king. And now, with a big disclaimer, I'm gonna go and look at Warcraft logs from 9.2 Sanctum of Domination. Now, big pinch of salt here, guys. 1 legendary, no double legendaries, no 4-sets. Let's look at how healers are performing in terms of HPS. Surprise, surprise. Resto Druid, without the double legendaries, without the 4-set, they're pumping right now. Again, the amount of data that you're getting is really kind of irrelevant, and I really, like I said, pinch of salt. This is going to change, there's going to be power spikes, but this is not unexpected. Resto Druid got big HPS buffs, Holy Priest got big HPS buffs, Mistweaver got nerfs to Fallen Order, and then everyone else said the same with Holy Paladin getting nerfs and being a little bit lower. So this is actually something that I fully expect, or something similar to happen at the start of 9.2, at the start of the new raid, because you will only have 1 legendary, you won't have the 4-set pieces, you won't have the 2-set pieces, but later down the line, there is going to be a big power spike for certain healers. Like I feel the 4-set bonus and the 2-set bonus for Holy Paladin is going to help them a lot. I do think Restoration Druid is only going to climb in terms of HPS. I think Holy Priest is going to climb in HPS. Mistweaver is going to have Necrolord. Most likely going to play Necrolord when you get your 4-set bonus. And then with 4-set bonus, Thunder Focus Tea, you're going to be weaving in your Chi Burst, your Bone Dust Brew every 1 minute. Thunder Focus Tea is 30 seconds cooldown. So you have to kind of... You're honestly going to have a different playstyle as Mistweaver. You're going to have to really pay attention to your bursts in terms of how you're going to provide the 4-set bonus. Refreshing Jade Wind, Bone Dust Brew, Chi Burst, can you fit them in, and are you going to fit them in at the right position? But this is a Restoration Druid overview. So, Restoration Druid is undeniably going to be one of the best HPS healers in 9.2 unless something really changes. So when we go back to the list, a lot of positives. HPS, you have Soothe, you have Vortex, you have Battle Rest, the only healer that does Battle Rest, which is not that big of a deal. I mean, we're talking about Mythic Plus and things like that. It's not that big of a deal because you have engineering battle res and things like that, but it can help out. You have really good tanking sterns. Ironbark is honestly one of the best tanking sterns you can get. It's relatively short cooldown, and that's really important, especially 45 weeks where you want to have some kind of a tanking stern in Mythic Plus. Again, a lot of this is mixing up Mythic Plus and raids, because I am looking, when maining a healer, I'm looking to main a healer that's going to provide me good balance in terms of Mythic Plus performance and raid. There's a lot of healers in here that are excellent in raid but might not be great in Mythic Plus, or maybe excellent in Mythic Plus but might not be great in raids and things like that. This is why Restoration Shaman is like at the top of the list. It's just looking really good for everything, and especially when you're trying to push really high-end content and you're trying to, you know, get rank 1s and things like that, community perception, group perception. Your group that you're pushing Mythic Plus might not want you to play a certain healer. Your raid that has certain amount of healers might not want you to play a certain healer. That comes into play at higher end content. I really believe that. So, again, Tony is another meme that we made in terms of the raid prediction video. Don't worry about this. This is more about not listening to the community perception and playing to what you enjoy. And Restoration Druid fits into me because I actually really enjoy Restoration Druid, especially Mythic Plus content in terms of Feral Affinity, in terms of applying bleeds. You're applying bleeds, you're applying dots, you're applying hots. Like, it's just, it's almost like an Affliction Warlock or something of healers, and I honestly kind of like that. Very good very good on heavy movement fights. So the niche of Restoration Druid is, you know, healing on the move. It's not that important these days because every healer can actually provide some sort of healing on the move. So unless a fight requires you to consistently move and pump out HPS, this is not that big of a niche anymore. You're also tanky. Restoration Druid is tanky. You have Barkskin, you have Bear Form, your conduits that help you with that, and you're just an overall a really tanky healer. If you look at the 4-set bonus, I think the 4-set bonus, the 2-set bonus is really strong. If you have Convoke Legendary, like you need to have a weak core that tracks how many Swiftments you use, because when you use the 3rd Swiftment, you're going to go into Tree of Life, and you kind of want to try and align your Convoke. You're running your Convoke Legendary as well, probably in raid situations. So that's something to consider. Difference in playstyle. You might actually also use Soul the Forest, which I feel is going to be really fun because I do like Soul the Forest, and I think it is a little bit more engaging, even though Tree of Life can also be strong. But that's something, food for thought when 9.2 raid comes out. Now, in terms of some of the negatives, or like the list here in the middle is neither negative nor positive. I kind of did it for Paladins as well. So this is something that raid healing can be difficult with ramps plus mana, and if you don't know mechanics. So Resto Druid, a lot of people will meme that Resto Druid is just putting rejuvenations, and if they say that, they probably don't play Resto Druid well. If you want to perform well as Resto Druid, there is a lot of cooldowns that you need to pay attention. If you're pressing rejuvenation over and over and over and over again in raid situations, you will run out of mana. It's almost like a discipline priest to some extent. You do want to start looking at applying rejuvenations 10 seconds before, you know, raid is gonna take some heavy damage. You want to think about it. Okay, I'm gonna use Flourish for this. Okay, I'm gonna use Convoke for this. Oh no, I might use Tranquility for this. So you kind of have to have in your head the type of cooldowns you're going to allocate for this raid damage, and you need to know when the damage is coming, because if the damage happened and you're applying rejuvenations, then you're gonna lose out. You're gonna be sniped, and it is one of the more difficult healers to play in raids, or to play well. I would consider Druid to be a lot harder to play in raid situations than Restoration Shaman, but Restoration Shaman has its own difficulty with Cloudburst Totem, but I don't think it's as difficult as Druid, because you have to anticipate damage instead of reacting to damage, which is a big deal. Now, some of the negatives, harder to play in Mythic Plus compared to Shaman. Again, I'm comparing it to Shaman because I played Shaman for a long time, Resto Druid is one of those healers that, again, like I said, you're gonna be rewarded for the type of effort you put in. If you're a player who plays Mythic Plus and you're just putting Sunfire, Moonfire, you're gonna be doing some damage, which is fine. But if you want to optimize damage, Feral Affinity, going in and out of Feral Affinity, applying bleeds, this can actually require a lot of... It requires a lot of button pressing. It requires a lot of effort. And a lot of that effort might not always equal to an output that you should be getting. Because Resto Shaman can do the same thing with Vesper Totem, and it's far easier to pump Vesper Totem damage and healing than it is Resto Druid going in and out of forms. This is why I say grass is greener on the other side type of thing. But we'll see if Vesper Totem is going to get nerfed. So no raid-wide damage reduction in raid, so that's a big deal. But I think the HPS is going to... The HPS gain is going to be pretty significant. That I don't think it's going to make that big of a difference. If you're looking to play a healer in raid, honestly, play any healer that you enjoy. I think raid healer balance has never been as good as it is right now in 9.2. Community perception. If you're looking to pug, this is going to be a big deal. People might not view Druid as a really good option because Resto Shaman exists. External innovates is a negative, and this is going to be a weird one. I actually don't like that you can give away your innovate and you gain some benefit out of it, but I don't like that you have these things that promote you to make yourself be weaker type of deal. You know, PIs for Holy Priests and Discipline Priests. Shadow Priests should never give away their PI. I feel it just promotes toxic raid environment where people are fighting over PIs, and it's the same for Resto Druid. Giving away your innovate, you still gain value out of it. Technically, you gain more raid value because the person who gets it gets a benefit and you get a benefit. But I still don't like this kind of concept. And I know a lot of people might disagree with this. They might feel like you're providing extra utility and things like that. I just don't think it's fun to give away your innovate and get 50% of the value and the person gets 100% of the value. So it's almost like punishing yourself and increasing. It's another deal. You might like it, you might not. It really depends on the type of player you are. I put it as a negative. Let's move on. And again, just to clarify, Resto Druid is going to be my alt, or one of the characters I'm going to be playing. I'm preparing Resto Druid for 9.2. I'm grinding with Resto Druid. I'm grinding with Resto Shaman. These two healers, very likely to be my mains, or one of them is going to be my main in 9.2 when the raid launches. So now let's go and talk about Mistweaver Monk. And again, positives, negatives from my personal opinion. I should have mentioned that in terms of negatives, I don't really like melee as much as I like range. So I did put it as a negative for Monk, but I should have placed melee as a negative for Druid as well. Because Druid technically is a melee... It's a melee healer in a lot of the content if you want to provide additional damage. But I actually really enjoy the melee that Druid provides. I don't know why, I just like the bleeds a lot. So, in terms of positives and negatives for Monk, there's a lot of things that happen. Ventier got nerfed, a lot of people are complaining about this. You're probably going to go different Covenant in 9.2 when you get the 4-set bonus, because the 4-set bonus, as you can see here, after you use a Thunder Focus Tea, you get this little circle, and then you're going to be pumping depending on which abilities and talents you have. Most likely, you're going to be running with things like the Refreshing Jade Wind, you're going to be running with Chi Burst, and you're going to be shooting them off when you get the 4-set bonus. And again, on top of that, you're also gonna use something like Bone Dust Brew. I don't have Bone Dust Brew right now in Ventier because I'm still living in the past. Keep in mind, guys, that there actually has been some undocumented changes coming with patch 9.2 in terms of nerfing Fallen Order even more. So initially, it was Sinister Teaching nerf in terms of the amount of cooldown reduction you can get. And now, without making a blue post, they nerfed Fallen Order in terms of how many Enveloping Mist the clones are going to be casting. And this is looking like a pretty sizable double nerf to Ventier. I'm not even sure if it's worth playing Ventier right now. I genuinely think that, again, it's kind of early days, but be ready to swap away from Ventier. That's something that's most likely going to happen. And I have started grinding my Necrolord for Mistweaver. So Mistweaver is actually going to be one of the healers that I'm going to be also trying to maintain. I know this is going to sound weird, but mobility, mobile, rolls, teleports can actually be really nice. I enjoy mobile healers. I enjoy mobility and being tanky. I really like that in my healer. And I know Shaman is not the most mobile healer, but you do have Spirit Wolf and it is pretty decent. You do have to go, like I talked about, Goblin. Rocket Jump is really, really strong. But you can't, you can't help with that. So Monk, still great overall HPS even after the nerfs. Still really good HPS healer. Might not be the king of HPS healers, but probably pretty close. So that's pretty nice. Passive damage in raid. And I know this is going to sound really weird because it's also a negative thing in Mythic Plus. Because You have the weakest overall DPS in Mythic Plus. And this is a big minus for me, because in Mythic Plus, I don't think Mistweaver is looking all that hot because of this one thing. This might actually bring them to the lowest tier in Mythic Plus because of one single thing, and that is healer DPS. Now, if you're doing content where this doesn't matter, don't look at this, but this is my type of negative and positivity in terms of healers. So, passive damage in raids is actually a good thing, because in Mythic Plus, you might not do a lot of damage because every healer is trying to do DPS, but in raids, a lot of healers can't do damage because they need to heal, can't heal and DPS at the same time, so they have to choose. And as a healer, you most likely, if people need healing, you're going to heal. You're not going to start doing DPS if someone is about to die. Unless you can deal DPS, and that's going to increase your healing. And Monk is exactly in this position. You have Rising Mist, and you're a Mistweaver. And you're going to have Ancient Digital Monastery in terms of legendaries. Your DPS is going to heal others, which is going to be a really big thing in raids. In raids, the passive damage is going to provide is going to be great. A lot of the healers can't do passive damage. The healers like Resto Druid, healers like Holy Priest, they cannot provide passive damage. There is certain things that they can do, like Holy Priest with tier set bonus, with your Holy War Chastise. You can use Chastise for DPS, and it's going to increase your heal if you end up using it a heal because of your tier set bonus. So there is a little bit of things like that. Like Restoration Shaman can provide passive damage, but Restoration Shaman has Kyrie and Vesper Totem, which to some extent gives them an ability to heal and damage at the same time. Or gives you an incentive to DPS in order to provide healing. Especially if you're running Kyrie and specific legendary, which I probably will be. So there are healers who can do it to some extent, but Monk can do it all the time because of how Rising Mist works and how Ancient Digital Monastery is going to work. Mystic Touch, 5% physical damage, absolutely huge, and probably one of the reasons why I might actually main Monk, because our raid composition right now is looking like double Resto Shaman, Discipline Priest, maybe Holy Paladin. And I don't know how many monks we're gonna have. Windwalker is not looking all that hot. Brewmaster is really good, but we don't have a Brewmaster monk in our raid right now. So there is a chance, there is actually a decent chance that I will main monk purely because of this. Purely because of providing Mystic Touch, because we might not have that. Because for a lot of raiding groups out there, they might have a monk in the group, they might have a DH in the group. Every raiding group should have 5% physical damage debuff and 5% magic damage debuff, and that is coming from Monk and DHs. And I advise people, when you're making a raid composition, is to bring at least 2 of those players, or have at least 2 of those players in a raid roster. Because what happens if you're doing a raid, if you're progressing raid, and one of those players cannot make it, for some reason they're late, they're not available, and you're missing 5% physical damage buff, or you're missing 5% magic damage buff, the raid is scuffed. This is why a lot of the times having backups is really important. So having like 2 monks and having 2 DH in the raid comp is pretty significant in terms of providing you with max raid buffs. Something to consider if you're trying to progress raids. So big tank, well, decent tank external. Cocoon is not the best of the best, but it's still a tank external. AoE stun in cap is actually pretty good, because a lot of the stuff in Mythic Plus cannot be CC'd, and in cap is really strong. I talked about Disease Dispel a little bit. I kind of mentioned it in Shaman. No Disease Dispel in Plaguefall, and you do have a Disease Dispel as a monk. Actually, pretty big deal. Plaguefall having a Disease Dispel is really important. I know it sounds weird, but if you're trying to do a really high Plaguefall key, and it's one of the best ways to get your Mythic Plus ranking up, because Plaguefall is almost like a free key. Disease is really kind of makes it easier. Great for sniping. This is something that I memed on my stream. I talked about if you're playing a monk and Resto Druid is using Tranquility, that's a perfect time to revival. But for people who are looking to just get the best HPS out of there, and I know there are people who are just looking to look good on the meters, revival is the easiest ability to not overheal. Because a lot of your other abilities like Tranquility, Healing Tide Totem, things like that, when you press it, if your other healers are pressing cooldowns, they're pumping. If you're a monk and you're just looking to look for good HPS, revival is hard to be outsniped. But this is something that you should not consider. This is more on the meme side, in more casual content, in more farm clears and things like that, just for the fun of it. Negatives, melee, I prefer ranged. To some extent, weakest overall damage in Mythic Plus, probably the weakest healer in Mythic Plus because of this one reason, and mana. Yulon in raid kind of needs innovative for full impact. Makes it a little bit weird because you have Yulon, and Yulon is going to... It lasts for a long time, but you can only use half of this cooldown because it requires you to spam Enveloping Mist to proc Enveloping Breath. And because you cannot spam, you align this with Mana Tea, which is all great and amazing, but once your Mana Tea runs out, you still have a lot of time of Yulon left, and you can't do anything with it, because if you do spam Enveloping Mist, you're going to run out of mana. You might look at using Potion of Sacrificial Anima, which is going to sacrifice HP for mana, which might be a decent potion to use if you want to optimize it. But the fact that in order to optimize Yulon in raid situations, because in raids you're going to run Refreshing Jadewind, the fact that you need to have an Innovate in raids to really make use of Yulon is really weird, especially if you have a Discipline Priest in raid, because if I do main a Monk, we do have a Discipline Priest in raid, and Discipline Priest also needs Innervates, and all of a sudden now if you have a Monk and Discipline Priest, you kind of need 2 Innervates, and I'm not sure if I get an Innervate. So a little bit of a downer in terms of trying to provide the max HPS you can as a Monk. You really do need to optimize your potion usage, or you need an Innervate to make your life a lot easier. That's something to consider. So now let's go to... Okay, before we're gonna go to the next healers, I don't want to make this video too long, but these are the 3 healers that I'm going to main. I'm going to play. Restoration Shaman, Druid, Mistweaver Monk. The next 2 healers are the healers that I'm going to park on the side. So let's go and look at Paladin. I don't want people to be discouraged from playing a Paladin. Maybe the memes of Paladin being dead are emerging and they're getting to people, but a Paladin is not dead. Paladin is still going to be used in Mythic Plus. Paladin is still going to be used in raid situations. Paladin still has a lot of things to offer, and I don't want people to be discouraged from maining a healer that they enjoy. The reason why I'm not going to be playing Paladin again, these are some of the disadvantages right now, but it's mainly to do with personal reasons. I'm kind of burnt out from Paladin, and I've slowly realized that I don't fully enjoy the melee playstyle of Holy Paladin. I've mained Holy Paladin for a really long time in BFA, the Glimmer build and stuff like that, but I've slowly kind of like leaned away from Paladin. I still think it is a fun healer, I still think it provides a lot of things, but in terms of my enjoyment to Paladin, I'm just not having the same thing. Paladin could be the best healer in the world in 9.2. They get buffs that make them the best. I still won't play Paladin. I'm still not having as much fun out of Paladin as I used to. So there's still a lot of positives out there. You still have a really nice force set. You still have, you know, a lot of utility. Raid-wide damage reduction, you know, your Devo Aura Master combo. Still very easy to use, really large range, still very nice to optimize. A lot of groups still gonna like it. Passive raid damage, again, just like Mistweaver Monk with Fist Weaving, Paladin is going to do the same thing. Strong defensive externals, you have Bubble. I know Paladin is somewhat immobile, you only have Horsey, but man, what's the best way to provide mobility when you just don't run away from the mechanic and just immune it? Like, technically, that gives you mobility to some extent. Bubble is insane. Honestly, it's one of those things that make me think that every time I approach a boss fight or Mythic Plus fight and I'm like, I have Bubble, I can mess up completely. I can ignore a mechanic with this, and it provides me a lot of self-confidence when approaching certain fights. So Bubble is insane, in my opinion. Now, again, I do have Venti, and I think Venti is going to be popping off at the start of 9.2 because you're not going to have double legendaries, you're not going to have 4-set bonus. And I think Venti Ashen Hallow is still a really strong ability to use because it provides DPS, healing, and it can be worked into your raid cooldowns, into your mythic cooldowns really well. And I think Paladins are still going to enjoy Ashen Hallow. You're still going to have, you know, your Covenant-specific legendary that's... I press it now, and it disappears. A lot of convenience. Technically, Venti Holy Paladin is going to be more poke-friendly in 9.2 because you're going to have... Again, you can cancel your Ashen if you messed it up, which is going to lower the cooldown of your Ashen, and you're going to have Encrypted. If you kill it's going to give you cooldown reduction. And on top of that, it's going to be easier for you to align wings with Ashen because you're going to have the 4-set bonus. So you can absolutely play Venti in 9.2 and probably have an easier time in Pugs. But my question is, why would you do that when you can play Necrolord or Kyrian for an easier Pug experience, especially Necrolord? I definitely think people should, if you're playing Holy Paladin right now, get Necrolord ready to go, because I think with the 4-set and two double legendaries is going to be really interesting. So again, I mentioned Ashen, cooldown dependent healer. This is neither positive nor negative because it provides you with a more difficult healer to play. And a lot of people like difficulty. A lot of people like to optimize the cooldowns. A lot of people like to min-max their healer. And if you min-max Ashen, you're going to be pumping. But if you mess up Ashen, it's going to be a lot more awkward. But I said in 9.2 is going to be a lot easier in terms of you're going to get more Ashens. So it's either a good thing or a bad thing if you're a healer who's looking to play Holy Paladin. Again, this might change if you play Necrolord. I'm not sure if Necrolord is going to make a lot of impact in Mythic Plus. We'll have to see. So in terms of negatives, melee, again, I kind of came to a realization over the years that I don't really enjoy Holy Paladin melee playstyle as much as I did before. I enjoy Mistweaver playstyle in terms of melee a lot more. I enjoy Resto Druid melee playstyle a lot more. And Paladin is, like, in terms of enjoyment, a little bit down at the bottom. So that's something to consider. But that's my opinion. Feel free to disagree. Arguably the lowest HPS healer, and I think that's going to persist at least at the start of 9.2, because you don't have the 4 set, and I think the 4 set is going to give you a lot of value for Holy Paladin. So if you want to top HPS meters, I don't think Holy Paladin is going to be the way to go unless they're going to change something, or Necrolord is going to pump out a lot more than what people expect. So that's something to consider, and it's going to take time to get 4 set depending on what group you're doing, because a lot of the times healers don't get priority on tier sets, and you might say tier sets are bind on pickup, or yeah, that's true, but there is going to be a person that can't trade a tier set, and if that person can trade a tier set in a lot of raiding guilds, healer is never going to be a priority in those cases. So it might take a little while. And again, I talked about the nerfs and changes. Overall, I don't really like all the changes happening, and I actually don't enjoy the 4 set bonus in Mythic Plus. It's one of the reasons why I decided not to play Holy Paladin. I decided I don't enjoy casting Light of Dawns at full targets, full HP targets, just to get my cooldown reduction. And that's something that I've tried out in PTR, and I really tried to make up my mind about this. Not a huge fan. Really like it in raids, because most of the time Light of Dawn is going to hit maximum amount of targets. It's going to hit people that need healing. In Mythic Plus, it feels a little bit weird. So I'm not going to be maining Holy Paladin. It's going to be parked for the time being, but believe me guys, once the raid progression is over, I'm going to go back and start playing every single healer, and I'm going to be pumping out guides and all of those things, so keep that in mind. And now let's go to Priest, and honestly the only healer that I haven't mained, and I was relatively close to considering Priest, especially this Priest, because I think our raid composition could use a discipline, but I do feel that I'm relatively new to Priest in general. I'm relatively new to Disc, and Disc, I'm not saying you need to be like a rocket scientist to play it, but I think you need to have some time and practice to really pull off Discipline Priest. I feel like an average Discipline Priest a lot of the times is going to be worse than any of the healers that I mentioned, but a good Discipline Priest is almost always going to be better than any of the healers that I mentioned. So do I feel like I can play a Discipline Priest to an extremely high level? Not straight away. Maybe my IQ is too small, it's small brain. But either way, Priest, I think people are going to be sleeping on Priest in general because you have Holy, and honestly a lot of people are just ranking Holy as bottom tier of everything, and they don't even explain why. It's just the community perception of Holy is that it's just always been bad and it's always going to be bad, and I honestly feel people are sleeping on Holy in such a bad way. Like, just to showcase, let's see if you can get some of the crits here. 5 flash shields to get our flash concentration up and going. Yeah, flash concentration is not the most popular, is not the most interesting build, but 5 flash shields to get our flash concentration going. And let's go and pop our Holy Word spell and go into a heal. Resonant Words here. And our heal healed for 52k critical strike. And you can rotate your Serenity, Sanctifies, Chastise in order to get your Resonant Word buff, in order to get your tier set buff, in order to pump single target healing, like, to an extent that is just insane. I honestly feel a lot of people are sleeping on a Holy Priest to an extent that it's almost embarrassing. I think Automatic Jack, or Jack in general, is going to have a great time of doing Mythic Plus, pumping Mythic Plus as Holy Priest, and showcasing what Priest is capable, and maybe it's going to change community perception about this, because I think Holy Priest is going to be very viable in raids, very viable in Mythic Plus. But I have some disadvantages. I really don't like flash concentration. I think it's really boring and annoying to play. So I don't like flash concentration. I liked it at the start, but I don't like it anymore. I think Priest in general is quite squishy, depending on whether you play Disc or Holy. There is a lot of, like, you know, conduits with Fade and things like that that can help out with this. But I still think they're relatively squishy and immobile. or slow. And this is the biggest deal. I don't like healers that are relatively slow. You do have feather and you can, you do have feather and you can run around and things like that. But if you don't have Night Faith or Blink and things like that, it can be somewhat awkward. I would compare this to something like a Resto Shaman, but Resto Shaman has Wolf, which has no cooldown. And Feather does have cooldown and charges associated with it, so that's something to consider. So I do think that Shaman mobility is better than Discipline or Priest mobility in general. But if you have Night Fae or if you have Goblin Jump, Rocket Jump, a lot of this is kind of forgotten about. But yeah, to some extent, I'm a little bit unsure about Priest. I still think Priest is going to be an insanely undervalued class, especially Holy Priest is going to be insanely undervalued. I think Discipline Priest is one of the best healers or raid healers in the game. I don't think Discipline Priest is going to be pumping out a lot in Mythic Plus, which is really a shame because Discipline Priest is one of my favorite healers in Mythic Plus. But I don't think it's going to be pumping out that much in Mythic Plus, many compared to Holy Priest. So, advantages, double healer. It's the only healer that has double heal specs. So you can play, for example, you can play Holy Priest in Mythic Plus and you can play Discipline Priest in raids, or you can play whatever you enjoy because at the end of the day, you're just trying to have fun. Holy Priest be pumping in HPS and DPS, extremely undervalued in my opinion. Discipline Priest is arguably the best healer or raid healer in high end. So that's Discipline Priest. Discipline Priest is, again, if you're good, if you have consistent ramps and you don't die, this is going to be pumping. I don't feel confident enough that I could pull off Discipline Priest without having a lot more practice. That's basically one of the reasons why I'm not playing this, at least in raids. In Mythic Plus, I think in Mythic Plus this is a lot easier. I think in raids this becomes a lot more difficult, especially high-end Mythic raiding when you're approaching content under geared. I like this Priest in Mythic Plus, one of my favorite healers. Holy Priest is one of the easiest healers. So that's a big advantage. Again, a lot of people like to play simplistic specs, and one of the reasons is that if you don't have to worry about your rotation, you can worry about the boss mechanics. You can worry about what's happening on the screen rather than focusing on, oh, I need to press this, I need to press this, and then you're like, all of a sudden you're standing in fire. If you're new to healing and you're like, okay, my rotation is very simple, I'm stacking up flash heal 5 times and using heal, I can look at what the boss mechanics are happening, how can I avoid this. On top of that, for Holy Priest, Night Fae is looking pretty interesting in terms of in raid situations providing a lot of benefit or hidden benefit. So I honestly kind of regret not having Discipline Priest or Priest in general in terms of one of my lists. So just a quick summary of what's happening for me in 9.2 in terms of the healers I'm going to be playing. Again, I don't have 100% decision on what healer I'm going to be playing. That's going to be decided on the heroic week based on the tuning and based on... Honestly, when I have to log in, when the raid starts and I have to pick a healer, that's when I'm going to choose my main, because the gut instinct is going to bring you to a healer, or you're going to log in on the character you want to log in the most. And that's how you choose your mains if you have no idea what main to play. In your head, you might be overthinking, and this video might be like, I'm overthinking too much. But at the end of the day, when raid is released, you have to play, you're going to log in on the healer that you want to main. So Resto Shaman is looking like, honestly, like a pretty good option because it's a comfort pick. I played Resto Shaman for a long time, and it would feel really bad to step away from Resto Shaman when Resto Shaman is looking to dominate Mythic Plus. It honestly feels really bad to step away, so I'm gonna maintain Resto Shaman. I'm gonna maintain Druid, mainly because I honestly had an insane amount of fun on Druid with Necrolord in terms of Mythic Plus. I'm not sure if I'm gonna enjoy Druid as much in Raid as I enjoy in Mythic Plus, but the fact that your Feral Affinity is back, you're putting out Adaptive Swarms, Necrolord is looking interesting. It's so fun. I have so much fun with Druid in Mythic Plus. In Raids, if you're looking for a HPS pumper, this is probably going to be it. I mean, nobody hates being top of the HPS meters, but it's something that you should not pick a healer just based on that, unless, you know, depending on the content you're doing. Monk is probably going to be a pick because of this. Like, there is probably a very high likelihood chance of me maining a Monk because of providing Mystic Touch in the raid group. Because of our current raid composition, we have like 2 Resto Shamans, possibly 3 Resto Shamans, Discipline Priest, maybe Holy Paladin. Maybe this is going to be the reason or the year I'm going to be playing Monk as a main, and it's going to be because of a raid buff. We'll see. Paladin, again, I'm kind of bored down to Paladin. There's many good reasons to play Paladin. If you enjoy Paladin, stick with Paladin. Don't let the memes get to you. The memes are highly over-exaggerated. Paladin is going to be fine, but it's probably not for me because I'm kind of burnt out. I'm not enjoying the melee playstyle right now. So that's my personal opinion. And Priest, honestly, I'm a little bit scared to try this Priest in raids to some extent. Or what it would take for me to min-max disc in raid situations. And I'm kind of going back to a comfort pick of Restoration Shaman. So that's basically my reasons for it. But I do think Holy Priest is going to be extremely undervalued, and it's going to have a lot of an easy healer to play and provides a lot of a lot of output in general. But Discipline Priest is going to be something that in high-end mythic raiding requires a lot of practice, and I think it would take me longer to really get a grasp of this priest, longer than one tier. Like, especially the fact that I haven't played this in raids at all. I basically played Discipline Priest only for Mythic Plus because I really enjoy it. So that's why I'm not going to be picking Priest. I think Priest is an excellent choice, if not the best choice for a new healer coming in, because of how much versatility you provide by having 2 specs, Holy and Discipline. And again, guys, I apologize for a long video. This is a little bit of a scuffed video. We have like a scuffed list of all these things, something that I made and something that I made on a Twitch stream and things like that. But I hope this helps you with my thought process when it comes to picking a main. A lot of it comes down to the raid composition. A lot of it comes down to what I feel comfortable with, what's perceived to be strong. Again, a lot of people come down to me and they say that I play Flavor of the Month healers, and they say it in like a negative, like a derogatory way. And I honestly never understood this, because I do enjoy a lot of the healers out there. I really enjoy the playstyle of a lot of the healers. And if you're trying to do high-end raiding and high-end Mythic Plus, it's never fun to sit out. Like, it's never fun to sit out in raids because you have a composition of 4 or 5 healers that have the same skill. And that happens a lot in high-end raiding guilds, where you have healers that are very similar in terms of skill, and the only thing that differentiates them is their class. And it sucks sitting out on a raid boss because you played the wrong class. So that's something to consider. Not everyone's going to be picking this, not everyone's gonna have the same mindset, but I enjoy every healer. I think every healer has fun aspects to it. Maybe Monk, maybe Paladin is something that I kind of grown bored of in the recent years, but I enjoy every healer, and I don't feel bad about having to main a Druid or a Monk or even a Priest to some extent. I still will have a lot of fun. So that's something to consider, guys. And again, guys, keep in mind, these are my personal opinions. Feel free to disagree with all of this list. I try to take in my raid composition, community perception, the strength of healers both in Mythic Plus and raids, because both of those are really important for me. If you're looking to main a healer just for raid, my list would be completely different. Or if I was looking to main a healer just for Mythic Plus, it'll be very... Like I said, I'm looking for a healer that's gonna hit every spot, and also gonna be brought into my raid group based on the raid roster that we have in terms of healers. Guys, let me know which healer you're maining. I still don't know 100% what healer I'm going to be playing, but it's going to be decided during the heroic week, especially after the raid tuning or class tuning is going to come out. But out of those 3 healers, one of those is going to be brought in as my main for the raid. Which one do you kind of hope I will play? Let me know, and I'll see you in my next video.